you know there's an epidemic of low testosterone in young males.
It's crazy. I was reading the stats the other day. What is it?
It's because we're poisoning them.
Is that why?
That's why.
What is the headline stat there regarding testosterone in men? It's decreasing, isn't it, year over year?
Year over year, and more than half have either low normal or low levels. I've never seen anything like it. I've been measuring testosterone levels in my patients forever, and we're poisoning them. There's an app I like called Think Dirty. It's not what you think it is. It allows you to scan your personal products, and it tells you on a scale of 1 to 10 how quickly they're killing you. So, for example, I've shaved with Barbasol for 50 years. And when I learned this a decade ago, I scanned it. 1 is good, 10 is kill you early. It was a 9. And I was horrified because the parabens and phthalates are known hormone disruptors. So now I shave with something called Kiss My Face. It's a 2, lasts longer than Barbasol. And I do that because I love myself. I mean, why would I poison myself unless I was not that smart? And so just start reading the labels of your toothpaste, of your deodorant, of your shampoo, of your body wash, of your makeup.
And what am I looking for? Because if I read the labels of my toothpaste, I mean, I wouldn't know if it was good or bad.
So you can scan
it with the app.
Or EWG, the Environmental Working Group, has an app similar to that. You just educate yourself because it's not just about you. It's about generations of you, because the health of your body matters when it comes to what babies you may make.
Okay.
M is mental health. Believe every stupid thing you think. Be masterful. You want to damage your brain? Be masterful at predicting the worst and then making it worse.
How does that have a bad impact on the brain?
Negativity increases stress. Plus, negativity drops activity in your cerebellum. So we talked a little bit about the CEO, the prefrontal cortex. Well, it's intimately connected to the processing part of your brain, your cerebellum. It's about 10% of the brain's volume, but has half the brain's neurons. And negativity tends to deactivate it. So it actually makes you more confused. So if you think of an athletic slump, they're focused on, I'm going to miss. And of course, they miss. The second I is immunity and infections. So much to talk about with the pandemic, but people who have low vitamin D levels are much more likely to die from COVID. They're actually much more likely to die from virtually anything. Low vitamin D, which occurs in about 60% of the population, is associated virtually with every bad thing, including a smaller brain. So if you want to have a smaller brain, never go in the sun, never test your vitamin D level, and never take a supplement. Brand new study out just last week. People who take a vitamin D supplement have 40% decreased risk of getting Alzheimer's disease.
How do they establish?
How simple is that?
How do they establish like causation in these studies where one would also assume that people that take vitamin D supplements have a general...
So this was a prospective study where they gave half the group vitamin D and then they followed them. It was a fascinating study. But there are tens of thousands of studies on vitamin D and its impact. And the darker your skin, the more sun you need. So an interesting study from the Bahamas, they looked at people who were raised in the Bahamas who then migrated to the United Kingdom. So healthy vitamin D to no vitamin D because of the weather.
Botswana to
So
England.
from Botswana, and the incidence of psychosis went up.
Interesting.
So, and how simple is it? It's a blood test. Get your vitamin D measured. Everybody listening to this, you should know it, like you know your BMI, like you know your blood pressure. and optimize it. Either get in the sun more if you can, or take vitamin D3 with vitamin K2. I mean, it's super simple. And I mean, it's like, that's easy. That's something you can do right away. If I wanted to mess up my immunity, I would encourage myself to have leaky gut. So I'd encourage myself to damage the lining of my gut with antibiotics and alcohol and pesticide-laden foods, and I wouldn't eat any fiber. So I would really lean into the standard American diet.
Going back to your point about environmental toxins, I've always wondered if it was like pseudoscience that cosmetic products we have in our house are having an impact on our hormone levels. You were talking about hormone levels there. My partner has always said to me things like, be careful with what's in that toothpaste, Steve, or she'll look at products that I have and go, nope, or yes. I'm like, where's the science? We talked about testosterone and
the science is huge. There's a wonderful book. So if you ever, if you want to get rid of the doubt, it's called The Toxins Solution by Joe Pizzorno, who started Bastyr University. He's one of the most well-respected naturopaths in the world. Now, if you want a shortened version, read my book, The End of Mental Illness, because there's a whole section on toxins with about 100 scientific references. So you don't want toxins. And you don't want to think it's pseudoscience unless you've actually gone to PubMed.gov and studied it. So many people have called my work pseudoscience, and I'm like, go to PubMed.gov today, you'll see I've published 80 studies, and oh, by the way, there are 15,000 studies on SPECT. So, I'm a fan of your sweetheart.
Yeah, she always seems to be right about everything. I'm pessimistic on my way in, and then God, this doesn't sound so great, but what she says registers, and then I speak to an expert, and they go, "Your girlfriend is right." That is the story of my life. So she's just a little bit, and I'll say to her, I'll leave this podcast now, and I'll go. She's actually sat over there. I'll go and say, "Oh, by the way, I spoke to him, and he said the stuff you said about all the cosmetic products I use is right." And she won't catch. She'll go, "Yeah, I know." It happens literally every week, like 3 or 4 times a week. One of the things I read in terms of the impact of cosmetics on our hormone levels was that over the last 20 years, our testosterone levels have declined by about 50% on average, which is absolutely terrifying.
Terrifying.
I have a lot of friends who are I have a staggering amount of friends and people that I know that are in sexless relationships and are struggling with sex and other hormone related issues. I've got a friend that is had a challenge with, is it POS?
PCOS.
PCOS.
Polycystic ovarian syndrome.
And I just have a suspicion that it's not nature that's causing some of these issues. So when I hear about how the cosmetic products we have in our life are influencing our hormone levels, I go, maybe this is the guy that's stitching us all
It's worth making sure someone does an ultrasound on our ovaries to see if that's in fact the case. But I have a funny story on PCOS. When I first met my wife, she wouldn't attach. It was more like she was the guy, and we'd make love and I want to cuddle, and she's like, okay, done. And I couldn't, like, I loved her, and she'd come and she'd go, and she's like, just make me crazy. And then I took her to our first fight was on the dog we were going to get. So I wanted like a King Charles Cavalier. I wanted like a lap dog, something cute, something I could just have fun with. And she wanted a Mastiff, or she wanted some killer dog. And no, it's just not me. And so we got into a fight about that. Anyways, I get her to see a hormone specialist, and she diagnoses her with PCOS. And it just made such sense. And what she did is an ultrasound of our ovaries. They were like loaded with these little cysts. And she treated the PCOS. And so PCOS, women's testosterone levels tend to be higher, and their blood sugar tends to be higher, and they have more problems committing. So she fixes it, and then Tana becomes like committed. I love this. But then she calls me at work one day, and she said, I found this pocket poodle in Northern California that's like 2 pounds. And I'm like, who are you? It's like, change your hormones, change your dog.
Do you recommend that we check our hormone levels frequently?
Every year.
Every year?
Every year. DHEA, testosterone, thyroid, estrogen and progesterone for women every year. Because for women, their progesterone drops about 10 years before they go into menopause. Progesterone's the natural anti-anxiety hormone. And when it drops, all of a sudden a woman's 40 and she can't sleep. And she's more anxious and she's more irritable, and it's causing relationship problems. And she goes to the doctor and gets a prescription for Ambien, for Xanax, and for Lexapro. And oh, by the way, she's drinking more or using more marijuana, and she doesn't know why. And it's easier to replace the progesterone than to deal with all those other strategies that help you feel better now, but not later.
Is that what they call perimenopause?
It's earlier than that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, perimenopause is sort of, for most women, are in like late 40s. Hormones are so important. And if your hormones aren't right, your brain isn't right. One of the things I talk about in the book is that women have a higher incidence of Alzheimer's disease. Now, part because they live longer than men, because they make better decisions. But a man's brain is used to not having estrogen, right? It's been raised primarily on testosterone. A woman's brain is used to having estrogen. So when she goes through menopause and doesn't have estrogen, blood flow in her brain drops, and it puts her at greater risk for things like dementia. And so I'm a big believer in, the reason your hormones drop with age, it's the planet's way of eliminating you. And I'm not okay with that. I want to stick around as long as I can. And so hormone replacement can be super helpful for people who need it.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.